no one's got a lock on the truth. There's always a little bit of a piece of the puzzle, particularly when it comes to exit planning.
Absolutely.
There's always a little piece that's missing for most people. But it's fun to kind of decode it and kind of try to offer a different perspective. As a thought leader, that's how you do it. You listen.
Totally agree.
You don't speak. The best speakers are really great listeners.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast, broadcasting live here from the Exit Planning Summit, hanging out with all types of different CEPAs, advisors, and partners inside of our EPI community. A big day here. We are celebrating the class of 2008, which they've completed now 15 full years of being a certified exit planning advisor. And I have my friend Steve with me, part of that class of 2008, part of that group that's celebrating 15 years. And it's also the class that my dad was in, so it's very certainly familiar to me. But when I'm sitting here, and thinking about what you and my dad and somebody like Sean Hutchinson have done over the last 15 years, it's actually quite impressive. I couldn't imagine. So if you rewind with me, all right? So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Rewind with me back to 2008, where you probably sat in what, Chicago?
Yeah, University of Chicago.
University of Chicago, Booth School of Business Gleacher Center.
Exactly.
And there was no methodology or process yet, right? You were really being taught out of the $10 trillion opportunity book, and my dad describes it as being taught like a lot of concepts and philosophy. So can you rewind 15 years when you're sitting in that CEPA class and tell me what that experience was like?
Oh, yeah, it was a student-style environment there.
Yeah.
And we were just, all in the room together, and Rich and Pete started, presenting, and they had a few other advisors that would come in and again, talk about the space of, financial planning, the business, but really it wasn't a package deal. It was kind of really spread out. And because at the time I was a CFP and also, selling businesses like I do today.
Yeah.
So I was, really familiar with, some of the concepts right off the bat, but it really wasn't as organized as it is today. Obviously, there wasn't a methodology, a process in place. And, I knew when I was selling businesses at that time, you had to do something better, for the business owner.
Yeah.
And back then, valuation really wasn't all that mainstream as far as trying to get a business owner to basically value their business. The only way that they would do it is just because of estate planning reasons, or they had to die or something like that. It was a forced IRS situation and all.
Yeah.
And so I can just see now that from that whole week, when that was like when President Obama got elected, up in Chicago, he was having a celebration there and everything. Today is just changed. It's come full circle. Back in the day when I went home, after that 2008, I started doing my brochures and stuff, and then I started going out talking to everybody, and everybody thought I had like 5 heads. What are you talking about?
Right.
I don't need you. I'm the CPA. I'm the estate planning attorney. We don't need to collaborate. And so it really has come full circle now.
So back then, you're saying is that the advisors were actually kind of all spread out, right? Like came in from a business side, the CPA came in from the CPA side, financial advisors came in. It was actually back in the day when you guys came, it was mostly business advisors, value growth guys, and CPAs that were a part. Now it's really obviously flipped.
Exactly.
But nonetheless, you came out of CEPA, and it was still kind of disjointed for you a little bit in terms of team building.
Totally.
Yeah.
It was totally disjointed, and it was very hard at that time to really get people to buy in for collaboration, because everybody still wanted their dollar for themselves, and they weren't really trying to think what's best, because from my CFP upbringing, you approach the client as a fiduciary, and that's why I think a lot of these guys are, meaning the financial advisors, here that are coming, see it that way as well. That we're really working for the business owner, not our own individual practices.
Exactly. You find that collaboration and team building is better than it's ever been?
Better than it's ever been.
Yeah.
Totally. And
Good.
I think the reason is because of EPI, is the Planning Institute.
Well, at least we gave people a process, right? We gave maybe a set of core values and a process that shows kind of where we all play, and then shows the value that we all bring at the individual, on our individual and kind of essential roles.
Well, I think now things have gotten more and more complicated from an advisor standpoint. So you got to stay in your space, or if you start venturing outside your space, you may get in trouble.
Well, that's true too, right? Particularly, right, with the financial advisors now and a lot of compliance, probably maybe even more so than it ever has been, right?
A lot of compliance, and then even selling businesses. It's very more complex today. There's more private equity firms out there than ever. You really got to understand who they are. Yeah. Are you talking to an independent sponsor? Are you talking to someone that actually has a fund, dry powder? It really makes a lot of difference of, spinning your wheels. Or do you really need to sell this thing to a strategic? And how do you go about, talking to a big strategic?
Do you remember how you found EPI back then? Because we had, when you heard me on stage talk about this in 2008, there was only one or two classes before your class. So there might have been maybe 40 people that had the designation, super early adopter of exit planning. I don't even know how you would have found us, because you're in Atlanta, Georgia then?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, up in Alpharetta, my practice. Yeah. And at the time, I was still doing financial planning and exit planning and selling businesses. Yeah. And I think it was an email, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I think I got an email. And it might have been, maybe Rich or Pete, got a list, of something I was involved in, maybe from a business broker standpoint.
Or maybe from a conference that they attended or something.
Exactly. And when I saw it, I was like, this is it. Yeah. I said, this is right. This is kind of like pulling everything together, because I've always said, exit planning is really financial planning. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Of course. From the big, picture standpoint.
So it's another asset inside of your financial portfolio. For
an owner. So it kind of spoke really good for me, based off of where I was in my career at that time.
Yeah, that my dad also doesn't really recall how he fell in, but similar to you, a business guy, right? He was doing the value growth stuff and then representing companies for sale to third parties. Really felt, my dad always talks about, something was missing for me. The whole financial planning thing was new to him. The whole personal planning he had really never investigated. And so he saw that three-legged stool approach that EPI had talked to and said, hey, I think I got to go do this. And then talk about, when you're talking about collaboration and teaming, remember my dad came out of kind of corporate America. Right. So when you came in, you were already in the advisory space.
I was in the advisory
Dad was
space.
Pretty new to it. 2006, I think, is when he launched his consulting company, taking that process and knowledge that he had in corporate world and trying to deliver it to small and middle market companies. So he was also coming for a kind of a national network of guys like you that focused on helping those small and middle market business owners, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was thinking, okay, how can I help that business owner make more money at the end? Yeah. And because at that time, private equity firms or businesses, they were only selling 4 to 5 times then, or even 3.
Right.
3 to 5.
Yeah, 3 to 5.
And when you look, back from 2008 to where we are today, I'm right now I have a deal of 8.5 times with a private equity group. Yeah. Things have just changed because, as we prepare our business owners better, the value is going up, and that's exactly what the value methodology is all about.
Yeah. So talk to me about then, fast forward 15 years, how have you seen, as somebody that's been very active too, right? Have spoken, taught at EPI, launched and ran a chapter of EPI, pretty involved in the exit planning space. How have you seen that the space change over those 15 years?
I think it's changed in much more of an awareness.
Yeah.
And it's in more of an acceptable awareness.
Yes. Yeah.
Just like I said before, people thought I had 5 heads. Even when I remember, going into the chapter, starting the chapter in Atlanta. Yeah. There was a great turnout, and we kept it going for a long time and continual turnout. But there was a sensation for more knowledge of how to do things better. And I think as time went on, it became much more of a fiduciary play of how can we really help these owners really achieve, their lifelong dreams. Because I think really what has really spurred it is really the financial planning community.
Really? Okay.
Okay, because when you think about EPI, it's the, how you want to say it, it's the specialty place for business owners.
Yeah, sure.
The financial planning community doesn't have a specialty resource education space.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
for financial planning.
Yes.
I mean, you got the estate planning people, you got the retirement people, you got the investment houses and all that. But really, when you look at who makes up the wealth in America, it's the business owners.
Exactly right.
Right? Because they've given away, the big corporations, you can't get really good stock options anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Back in the day, you could really, bank it.
Yeah, sure.
Now, if you really want to make wealth in America, it's a business owner. Do you want to work 40 hours a week for 40 years and accumulate your wealth, or do you want to, bust your backside, and put the time in, and things go well, and boom, you create a $5 million business or a $10 million business or a family business of $50 million.
Right.
And so that's where the wealth is coming from in America.
So where do you see, like I said on stage this morning, I think that it's going to be a super interesting next 10 years, right? Because all the baby boomers turn 60, the youngest baby boomers, I guess, turn 60 this year. So that's going to drive a lot of activity over the next 5 to 10. And then you have the next couple generations, the millennials and the Gen Xers, people in their 30s and 40s and 50s, that are going to either be buying or starting companies. And then I think they're going to be the boomerang exits, meaning they're going to buy a business or start a business, in 10 years or 15 years later, sell it, and then do it maybe 2 or 3 times. So what are your insights on where we're heading if you looked out 5 years from a profession and from business owners?
Oh, wow. I think the genie's out of the bottle now.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I think, the baby boomers,
we
were the stopgap.
Yes.
We were the ones that are basically saying, we want to give it to our kids, or, we'll just not think about it. We'll liquidate, go on and do our stuff. We've kind of convinced them now. Well, really, I think the tech community. I think the technology community back in the day, when they started the VC of create something, sell something, create something, sell something, rolled over into planning, for baby boomers. It became a little bit more mainstream. So now, since we're doing this and we've been attacking baby boomers because they had the wealth, now you got to go, downstream to all the new businesses that are being developed. Because I just talked to one. I just talked to another group of business owners that were, millennials, and actually, they were in the Uber startup, and they created a business. Okay.
Interesting.
And so now I'm talking to them about selling their business. Right. And it's like they're all about exit planning. They go, what do we need to do? What's
they're already starting with the end in mind, right?
They're already starting with the end in mind. Perfectly said.
So I think that it's kind of an excellent opportunity to really learn about what it takes to actually produce that company, because we all need to surround ourselves with guys like you, people that can advise us on how to do that, how to align the 3 legs of the stool. Yeah. So I think it's going to be more in your face than ever before. Like you said, would you say the genie's out of the bottle for sure?
Genie's out of the bottle. Everybody's starting to think now, like, okay, what's in it for me with this investment?
Yes.
People are looking at it not as a income to provide for my family, but more of a wealth creation.
Yeah. I think so. Last question, and we wrap down this particular segment of the show, is for a guy that has really helped pioneer and trailblaze a profession, becoming a SEPA when there was like 40 or 50 people. Now you see like 2,000 people become certified exit planning advisors in any given year, and you see about like 200 people in a SEPA class. So a lot of new SEPAs. The summit actually has become really a great next step for those getting certified to dive deeper and learn more. But at the same time, it's become a cool place for people that aren't necessarily certified yet to learn more and be exposed to gentlemen like you. But if you had a couple of pieces of advice for these 800 new SEPAs that we just certified through the first quarter, as a veteran guy, what are you thinking? What's on your mind?
Well, this is kind of how I don't think you understand business owners until you understand the P&L and the balance sheet. If you can't read a P&L and a balance sheet, I don't think you're going to connect well with the business owner.
Yeah, interesting.
I mean, that's just kind of, my way of identifying with the business owner, because once you start talking to them, they like to talk numbers, right?
Right.
And so I think because, being a CFP, they don't teach you that in the College of Financial Planning or anywhere. And having the ability to do financial analysis or have a little bit of an understanding of it, I think that will accelerate you even more so, elevate your game far more than anything else that I've seen.
That is really good advice. My dad taught me the same thing, that you got to run the business by the numbers. So as professional advisors from across all different professions, understanding more about the P&L and balance sheet is going to actually do you good along the way in your conversations with business owners. That's great advice.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, Steve, I appreciate you spending a few minutes with us here at the Exit Planning Summit.
My pleasure.
I told Steve I'm going to have him come into Cleveland so we can continue this a deeper dive conversation around the topics that we're discussing today. You guys stick with us, and we'll be right back.
Cornerstone Business Services are M&A advisors, bringing a highly successful, high-touch level of service of investment banking to the lower middle market. At Cornerstone, we don't just make deals. We craft personalized solutions with an expert team that has decades of experience in buy-side, sell-side valuation services. We understand the deeply emotional process of selling a founder or family-owned business, with first-time sellers who are likely embarking on what will become the largest financial transaction of their life. We're more than just investment bankers. Cornerstone is a trusted partner in helping business owners begin their next chapter. You only get one chance to sell your business. Cornerstone can help you finish strong.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider. We're hanging out still at the Exit Planning Summit, having a variety of different guests a part of the show. So just before we got on air here, I was talking to my friend Chris about it's actually his first summit, and we have you pretty involved, man. I was thinking about all the stuff that you're doing inside of the EPI community, and it's pretty cool to have you a part of it and be so kind of dedicated and in it and intense right out of the gate. So welcome, and I really appreciate it, man.
I love it. Excited to be here, like a big cannonball into the community.
It really is. He's sitting on my owners panel. I want to talk to you a little bit about that and being an exited owner and what you're doing today. I want to talk about your new business, Trainual, something that for our listeners that are certified exit planning advisors, something that works into what we call the 4 intangible capitals. If you're a business owner or business executive or leader listening, something that we should all be using to help systematize our business. What else? We got you in the exhibit hall as a partner. He was in the author showcase with his book, The Business Playbook, something that I think everybody should pick up. You guys have probably seen it on my LinkedIn as well. So let's talk about the book first.
Yeah, let's start there.
So you put all this knowledge together. Tell me about what's in the book, how should a reader use it, and kind of what inspired it.
Well, let me go back first to right after I sold my first company. I was trying to figure out what should I do next. And a couple of my friends said, well, why don't you help me with my business? Why don't you help make my company run better? And so I said, all right, cool. Why don't you send me over like how your business works? Do you have like a operations manual? And they were like, no, I don't have that. And I was like, okay, well, do you have like a handbook, or do you have maybe like an org chart? And they were like, no, I haven't done that yet. And I said, well, what about like job descriptions? Tell me who works here. They're like, okay, I have those. Like, let me look up the job. Oh, the link's dead. Sorry. They took it down off the hiring site. They didn't have any way to teach me about their business. And so I said, okay, let's spend a few hours together. Let me extract it from you. Let me understand your business. And as I started doing that and my consulting practice started growing, I realized that every company has this story. They have this package of what makes them unique. And you have to teach your new people that information so that they have the same foundation. But it's that information that makes your company valuable. That 100%. Is the piece that you would be handing off as an asset to a buyer, right? And so every company has what I started calling a business playbook, and that's what we exist to serve, and that's what this book exists to help you write.
So in your first business, which was what, video production?
Yeah.
Yeah, so were you a systems guy? Like, what got you into that thinking? Because I do think it's unique for many business owners, and I think using EPI language, if you will, is the 4 intangible capitals. What you help with in part is structural capital.
For sure.
And I think it's one of the most robust capitals to have. And I agree. I don't think most businesses are as systematized, kind of one source of truth, if you will, as maybe your mindset was getting into that. So did you have that in the video production company too? Was that natural for you?
I wouldn't say it's natural, but it made me feel like my business was more mature.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
fair.
like at the beginning, I was very much the technician. I was doing the editing. I was doing the camera work. But then as we started hiring camera operators, I saw this inconsistency. And I thought, well, let me design the best practice. What do I expect? And then as we started setting up in different venues and arenas around the world, it was like, okay, we need checklists. We need SOPs for how we do this consistently every time. So for me, it was like a necessity as a bootstrapped entrepreneur to develop those systems. And then I just kind of fell in love with it. I thought, well, how do I brick by brick build this structure of my business?
So the book came after the sale of your first business.
Yeah, way after. So I had my first business, I had my second business with the consulting. I wanted to write it when I had my consulting business, but I thought I've only worked with a few dozen, maybe 100 companies at this point. It wasn't like a proven practice. And so I waited until a few years into Trainual. We had a few thousand companies using Trainual, and I thought, okay, now's the time.
That's crazy. So talk to me about the exit of the first company. So was it a third-party exit, a partner? What kind of exit did you have, and what did you learn during that process?
Yeah, so it was an asset sale. I mean, it was, I was young. I didn't know what I was doing at this time. I started this company when I was 14. I sold it when I was 26. So I sold part of it actually to our biggest customer. We had this IP within our company, this software that they had come to depend on. And so we carved that out, sold that to the biggest customer, and then I sold the rest of it, our equipment, our inventory, our contractor customer list, our events, to our biggest competitor. And so what was cool, what I learned is I knew these people for years and years before I sold the business. It wasn't like some magical person came from the ether and bought my business. It was relationships I had built, and that stuck with me.
Yeah, it was kind of similar. So I think that's why I was like kind of zoned in on you when we first met too, because we have that in common as well. Like you were 14, I was 16, and similar kind of exit actually. That was interesting is that we didn't do any like arbor care, right? Mine was like a lawn care, snow removal kind of business, right? A landscape management company. We didn't do any like arbor care, tree care, so we would sub that all out. And then that guy who was looking to grow his company and bring in different divisions said, hey, Scotty, have you ever thought about selling your company? We like your people, your process, your equipment. And I said, well, I mean, I have a certified exit planning advisor dad, so I probably know a little bit about it. But no, I mean, I was like 24 or 5 when I sold my company. But yeah, it was through a relationship that deal really got done and got done successfully. So now let's bounce post-book. So now you have the book. Did that inspire the system?
No, the system came before the book.
Okay, so now, so it's consulting company.
Consulting inspired the system. The book was in my head, but I thought it was too soon to write it. And so I put the system out because I wanted to show that we could really scale this system and have thousands of companies using it. And that's when I felt it was appropriate to write the book.
So talk to me about Trainual then.
Yeah, so Trainual, like I said, started in my consulting business. I was going company to company, was helping them put together an operations manual, a training manual, their orientation, and I thought, there's Word docs and Dropbox folders and YouTube videos, and why is there no system designed for this as an entrepreneur? And so that was the aha moment. So I designed a system. I came up with one as IP for my consulting firm. Again, remember, the IP in my video firm was what made it really valuable. So I thought, well, let me design software for my consulting firm. That's what Trainual started as. But then as people started referring it, it was like they don't need my consulting help necessarily, but their friend wants to use the tool. And when I started seeing that, I thought, okay, maybe this is
the entrepreneur in you started going.
How do I scale this? So we spun out Trainual into its own business. This was in January of 2018. And became its own entity. We kept the consulting going a little with a few of my people just to pay the bills, and then the software just started taking off. And so before long, by the end of that year, all in on the software.
Yeah, I was just a few weeks ago, right before he came here, we were at the EOS Worldwide Conference where you're a major part of that conference, you're a major partner there. And I was talking to one of your folks at Trainual, and I was like, yeah, man, their booth was the most exciting booth I've ever seen. Like, there's just dozens. It was like going to a packed bar where you had to like reach over someone to get a drink. There were so many people there, and they were all super excited about what you were doing. It's just like it reminds me of the EPI community. There's a vibe, there's an energy in working with you guys. So congratulations, because it was super cool to see that at EOS and bringing it here for all of our folks. And I think what's interesting about the EPI community is now not only can the certified exit planning advisor use it to grow and systematize their business, But again, going back to those 4 C's, they can use it to help their clients grow value. So you've done a lot here, actually, for the Certified Exit Planning Advisors. Can you talk about that offer that you guys put together?
Yeah, so that's why we love this community, is because there's this twofold way that we can help. So obviously, the Certified Exit Planners, they are assisting clients that are trying to increase the value of their business. And you hear everybody on stages and in books talk about you need systems and processes, but then how do you actually put that to work? What do you have to show for that? Our systems, where you collect all of that knowledge, all of your how-tos and your systems, your processes, it goes in our tool. And so with the people here at the event, we've extended, number one, first, a free account that they can use for their practice, for their business, to get familiar with the tool and to help structure their capital, everything they're doing. And then for their clients, they have a pack of $5,000 in credits that we're giving away to each SEPA for their clients. And with over 800 people here, or about 800 people here, that's $4 million in credits that we're giving away.
That's a pretty big deal. So how many? So you started back in 2018. How many businesses, how many owners do you have running on Trainual right now?
Over 10,000 around the world.
That's wild. And how many employees do you have? I was having breakfast with him in Phoenix, Arizona, talking to him about one of the biggest transitions for me, or one of the biggest struggles for me right now, is the decentralization that we're going through, and how our company is expanding. So we'll be on like our 35th employee, and just the other day, our director of marketing, Paige, was taking a group of people, remember the story, taking a group of people out to lunch, and my office window faces kind of the parking lot on the front door. We have this tradition on somebody's first day that you take them out to this extended 2-hour lunch, and I would watch like 8 people leave the office altogether. I'm like, what the hell is going on there? And it sunk right there, and I was like, pit in my stomach. I was like, it's the traditional lunch that we're doing with our new people, and they didn't ask me.
And you weren't invited.
I wasn't invited for the first time, and I was like, oh man, I'm getting old, I guess.
I know.
But it was so cool. In all honesty, it was actually pretty cool to see that tradition go through and see the camaraderie that they're building in their team and with others that aren't necessarily the Snider family. But you have a lot of employees too, right?
Yeah, so we just passed 120,
which
has been crazy in so few years. Yeah, but same thing. We'll start people in cohorts, groups of new people.
Yes.
And so we'll have 3 to 8 people start on the same day. And we do the same thing. We'll take them out to lunch. We fly them in if they don't live near the office.
Right.
And we really invest in the people. And it's strange when you stop getting those invites.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing.
So you also work with your brother, right, in Trainual?
Yeah. So my brother's our CMO, CRO. Yeah.
So how's that relationship, right? I have a brother-in-law. I have a sister. But I'm obviously in a family business with Dad. So how's it working with your brother?
It's great. We've always had a really good relationship. He's 3 years younger than me. So when I started my video business at 14, he was 11. He couldn't really be very productive, at 11. But through the years, he became like my right hand in the video business. He was the one that I was comfortable sending to a production in another state when I wasn't there, and we were just starting to do two things on the same day. And so he grew up with me in the video business. When I was consulting, he went his own way. He started this kind of adventure media company.
Yeah, sure.
He was doing crazy adventures, getting sponsored by brands, telling stories through video. And so when I went to start Trainual as its own business, I went to him and said, help me tell this story.
Super cool.
Help me share the story. And so he moved to Arizona for 2 months to follow me around with the camera, to launch our first website, our newsletter, our social media, and ended up that he didn't want to stop working for us. So
wow, that's a super cool story, man.
Yeah.
So now you've built basically 2 companies with him, right? That's super cool. Well, we got to get you back into sessions and whatnot, so I appreciate you spending a little bit of time. We're going to have Chris come to Cleveland so we can have a deeper show, and I want to do a show that basically is going to look like our panel discussion, where I want to talk to you about you as an entrepreneur and what you're doing today. But in the meantime, I ask everybody to pick up his book. It's an Amazon #1 bestseller, man. I think this is new. My book didn't have this sticker on it, man.
Fancy.
So I appreciate you coming out, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, everybody.
Are you a business owner seeking to unlock the true potential of your enterprise? Look no further than the 2nd edition of Christopher Snider's revolutionary book, Walking to Destiny: 11 Actions an Owner Must Take to Rapidly Grow Value and Unlock Wealth. In this updated edition, Snider presents proven strategies for maximizing your company's value and accelerating growth. Whether you're aiming to sell or simply want to ensure long-term success, this book offers a blueprint for building a thriving, self-sustaining business. Walking to Destiny isn't just another book, it's a game changer. backed by Snider's own experience as a successful business owner and as a SEPA. This book bridges the gap between business owners and advisors, guiding you towards financial freedom. But don't just take our word for it. Hear from those whose lives have been transformed by its insights. One satisfied reader raves, "The best guide for transitioning out of privately owned companies. I recommend it to all business owners and advisors." Another praises it on its focus for maximizing business value, calling it their, quote, principal tool for educating owners. Ready to take control of your business's destiny? Visit walkingtodestiny.com now and use code EXITISNOW to claim your free copy of Walking to Destiny, 11 actions an owner must take to rapidly grow value and unlock wealth. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make the moment perfect by seizing this opportunity today.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Exit is Now podcast. Hanging out with another author, a speaker, and an author here at the Exit Planning Summit this year with a super unique topic. So I really appreciate, I remember like the phone call that we had, and you started talking to me about what you were doing. And I said, look, we're developing a deep dive track, if you will, for the summit, and I think that should be a part of it. So welcome my friend Rich to the podcast. Thanks for being here, man.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And I really appreciate the conversation that we had, and I actually mentioned it when I opened the session yesterday about how it was your vision, understanding the way in which intellectual property is important to exits, yet it plays a relatively minor role in the exit planning process as it is now.
Yeah.
And like there are ways in which we could increase awareness among exit planners and among business owners to find some of those blind spots and to help them to capture additional value through their IP.
Yeah, so his book is obtaining a patent, and this is, I think, key for us as business owners and for advisors. A practical resource for helping entrepreneurs and innovators protect their ideas. Yes. And that's where it really hit for me, and obviously you know my father really well. Dad's a big IP guy, and he's a big protector of his IP, as you can imagine, right? So we create tons of content, and as we grow and get more exposure, protecting that is absolutely critical. When I was talking to you as well, I thought of a couple of my friends that own manufacturing companies with their dads and making very specific parts where they would get a patent. I can't even imagine having that type of world as well. So talk about that. Maybe talk about your session a little bit, and what are the highlights of the session that you had, and how you start to dive through this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my session, really, the point was to get to some of the blind spots that business owners have and exit planners even have regarding IP. And so there are a lot of different opportunities for increasing the value of a business through IP that are often overlooked. And there are also risks that are present. There are things that business owners just don't know that they don't know. And so, and in doing so, they don't protect things that can be protected. They don't maximize their IP.
Yes.
And there are other mistakes that they make as well of not maintaining their IP in the proper way, and again, not doing things to maximize the IP and maximize the value that they could receive at exit.
So where does it all start? So if I'm a business owner, I'm thinking I'm already here, and now that's just throwing a light bulb off for me.
Yeah.
Where do I start with this stuff?
Well, actually, I created a checklist for advisors, and of course, business owners can use it as well.
Sure.
And you can get that at goldsteinpatentlaw.com/EPS 2024.
Okay, great.
Because it was my giveaway here.
We'll include it in the show notes.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a good starting point.
Okay.
That's probably the most direct answer to your question of where can they start.
Yeah. Well, I'd assume it's kind of overwhelming because
yeah.
When me and Dad ventured down this path, not necessarily patents, but trademarks, copyrights, protecting that IP, there's a whole, like when they started going through all of our stuff, it's like, it's a little overwhelming. It reminds me of a little bit of a triggering event engagement, right? Where there's a slew of things you can be doing. Where do I go first? Right. Can you kind of talk like the difference between copyright and trademark? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to give the complete answer to your previous question too, is that So the point of the checklist was to start with questions. That's the bigger answer to your question.
Okay.
Is the way you get to those blind spots is by starting to ask questions. You start to ask yourself, do I have any products that are different than competitors that possibly could lead to a patent? Do I have a product that has a unique appearance to it that possibly could be a design patent? Do I have brands out there that people recognize? And those branding elements, whether it's a logo, a color scheme, or a company name, a product feature, those could be trademarks. So a lot of times you start with those questions to see, well, what is it that you have that could be protected?
Interesting.
And also to see what have you done already to protect yourself, and maybe there's ways to maximize that. And then just in terms of patents, trademarks, copyrights, people get confused between it and what they protect.
Exactly.
So simple way to remember it, if you're thinking in terms of a product and what makes the product different, you're probably talking about a patent.
Okay.
If it's the branding, then that's going to be a trademark.
Okay, got it.
And if it's content of all kinds, whether it's the content of a course, a video, a musical composition, a photograph or an image, that's going to be copyright. So content, copyright, patents for products. And branding, trademarks.
I don't think anybody's ever explained it that simple to me. I wish I would have known that like 3 years ago. I should have called you earlier, you know?
Yeah, well, so that's kind of what I like to do is I like to break it down
simplified.
simply. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, it's got to be the SEPA in you as well, right? Like simplifying the process is absolutely key. We just saw in the case study session, bringing clarity is key to business owners.
Well, I mean, now that you mentioned the SEPA side of it, very interesting, and I talked about this also in my session, is I've been working with entrepreneurs for 30 years. And during that time, I would like to think that I've always had my attention on value for the business. Like any project that we were doing, I would look at not just, well, we're going to get you a patent, but what's that patent going to do for your business?
Right.
What's going to do for the value of your business?
Right.
And so I had a lot of notions about the way patents affect value. But then when I came into the EPI community, then I got a whole new language for it, and I got a framework for the things that I already intuited. I intuited a lot of this for a long time, but I didn't have the language to give to it. I didn't have the common language to talk with colleagues, other exit planners about it, and I didn't have frameworks for helping people to accelerate the value, to really maximize on that. So I'm really grateful for this community to give me language and to give me the way in which I could grow it through a systematic process that I didn't have before.
Yeah, I mean, it's I say that really it's like a functional advisor. We have that core team advisor that sits around, but when you start thinking about how do I change the conversation from income to value, you heard me tell the story perhaps here where my marketing agency came in for us to talk to us about our new marketing system that they could create for us, right? Our new strategy. And when she delivered it to me, I said it was absolutely excellent. And I said, certainly put together the final agreement because we want to take this on. But now she presented it in a way that showed me this is how many leads we can get if we change some things here. And then this is if your sales guys can just close at the rates that they do today, this is how much revenue would pop out or income. And I said, well, that's great, but do you know how much value you just created by systematizing, by helping me identify IP to be protected, by writing new job descriptions for our employees? It's these functional advisors as well that come in and out of the process or the prepare gate, if you will, of the methodology that really start to help us really focus on building value kind of across the board. And it actually becomes pretty robust.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And actually, there's something else I talked about yesterday, which I think goes to that. There's this notion of a T-shaped advisor.
Yes.
Have you ever heard
the
T-shaped professional?
Yes, T-shaped.
So where you have, if you think of the letter T, it's got a horizontal portion and it's got a vertical portion. So the vertical portion of the T represents the deep expertise of an advisor. So if you're a tax expert, you have a deep expertise in tax. Or if you're an exit planner, you have a deep expertise in exit planning.
Right.
But then the horizontal part, the top of the T, is that you have a relatively shallow expertise, or you have some knowledge in a very broad range of topics.
Right.
And the way in which it plays into this field, into exit planning, is, let's say if you're an exit planning advisor, let's say you're the quarterback.
Yeah.
Then you've got a deep expertise in exit planning.
Yes.
But you need to know enough about different topics to know when to bring an IP attorney in, to know when to bring a family business expert in, to know when to bring a tax, estates, wealth advisor in. So you need to know about all of those topics to know how to collaborate with others.
Absolutely. So we got to start to wind down our segment and push ourselves into sessions. But last question, I think it's also very specific what you do, right? So how did you get into the work that you are in today? Because you're a very passionate individual.
Yeah, thank you. Well, the way in which I became a patent attorney ultimately, I was studying electrical engineering. I found out that the reality of being an engineer is not that you get to work on a lot of interesting projects that you could be passionate about, but that you work on one project, one little piece of something, not designing an airplane, but designing the button that goes above the seat for the ventilation, and then you work on that for 5 years.
Right.
And that was not me. And I learned about patent law, where you can essentially take that engineering knowledge and apply it to the law and help people with their technology, help people explain their ideas. Wow. So I went on to law school.
So you kind of fell in love there and then went over to law school.
Yeah, exactly.
That's super cool.
And then I became a lawyer, and I've been working with entrepreneurs for all this time, and on their businesses, helping their businesses to grow. And I discovered the exit planning community, and I jumped in here.
You fit right in. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on the show for a little bit. I would suggest everybody get online and check this book out. I'd like the word a practical resource. I think a lot of times really across the board in the legal community, right? We talk a lot about estate planning, for example, here. But intellectual property, I think, is also kind of a deep dive for a lot of owners, and they get confused. But I think practical resources for entrepreneurs. Yeah, please.
Practical and plain English. So that's the second quote here. Finally, a book that walks you through the patent process in plain English.
Yeah, I would agree. As a reader of the book, this is why I wanted you down in the author showcase this year, because I think more and more people need to be exposed to this. So, Rich, I really appreciate your time today.
I appreciate
and look forward to having you back on the show sometime soon.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott.
We'll see everybody. Welcome back, everybody, to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider, hanging out here on the very last day, the closing day of the Exit Planning Summit. So if you're watching in the background, you can see the teardown has begun, another successful event. I'm hanging out with Tom Deans, who has been back. I think this is maybe like your third EPI conference or maybe more,
exactly.
right? Third EPI conference. I always love Tom coming in. Because Tom's just such an amazing speaker. You're always super, super inspirational. You saw Tom on the show. He was actually one of our first podcast guests as well. So thanks for coming back. I appreciate it.
Great to be back.
Yeah, man.
Let's continue the conversation.
Yeah, let's continue. So there's a couple of things that I want to dive into. One, I want your experience from the summit, right? You've seen us kind of grow up, me and Dad, and grow into the Exit Planning Institute. So what do you think about what's going on here at the summit?
Two obvious comments. First of all, scale.
Yeah.
It's big.
Yeah.
And secondly, quality.
Right.
It's just you've attracted a completely different crowd. These are sophisticated people. These are people that are leading their industry, whether it's insurance or wealth management, investment side, M&A. It's a different crowd than it was 10 years ago. I mean, this is super impressive.
Thank you. I really am. I really, really appreciate that. So this year, you've been even like a keynote at this event, I think, right?
I have indeed.
Yeah.
I have twice.
Twice? I forget the middle one. I remember the first one, the middle one, and then this one, you were a power session speaker, which I just think is such an excellent role. So for our audience, you haven't been to a summit, these power sessions are like TED Talks, right? 15 to 18 minutes of delivering some of the most impactful information. So what was your power session about? Can you talk to that?
Yeah, it was a 45-minute speech condensed into 18 minutes. Ronald Reagan said it best. He said the best 60-minute speech is 18 minutes.
Yeah, perfect.
Seriously, I mean, no one ever goes to an event like this, here's a speech and goes, that was great, I wish it was longer.
Right.
Short is good. I like the format. It's short, punchy. It's like a TED Talk. You got to punch your stuff out real quick.
Yep.
You have to be super concise, super punchy. And I thought the format was great.
Yeah.
It really forced the speaker to be really, really tight with their idea and their thinking and their delivery. Yep.
So you were delivering on the same kind of concepts that you would hear in your books.
Yeah. I dribbled a little bit of new stuff in there from my impending new book, The Happy Inheritor, that's releasing next week.
Okay.
It was just a little bit of a teaser, just because I knew some people had heard me before. So there's some new data, right? There's a lot of wealth that's transitioning. A lot of that's sitting in businesses. I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
Right.
But the need, in other words, the need for SEPAs now has never been more important. There's just so much wealth that's aging out.
Yeah.
Old business owners that are struggling. So you know what you're offering is kind of ripe for the times.
It is. So talk to me about the new book. You graciously gave me a pre-copy, right? So before it actually released, and you said it's about what, 10 or a decade of stuff that you have that you've just always wanted to get out. It'll be your third book, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So 2,000 speaking events, 28 countries.
Wow.
I'm very pleased with the work that I've done, but there's also quite frankly, a lot of frustration.
Right.
Business owners who would look me square in the eye, shake my hand, tell me that they love my message, would read my book, and then precisely turned around and did absolutely nothing. And I'm thinking, what is going on?
Yeah, what is the action? Right.
What is going on? And through a lot of reflection, research, work with attorneys, I interviewed hundreds of attorneys, accountants, and wealth advisors, and quite frankly, psychologists as well, and psychotherapists.
That's interesting.
There is something going on out there. Mental health is a huge issue. And business owners aren't exempt. Just because they're wealthy and successful and need to exit doesn't mean that they're exempt. In fact, I would argue that there is some of the most damaged individuals are running corporations.
Yeah.
And there are a number of personality types that will simply never do the kinds of things that are being recommended by advisors to prepare their businesses and their families for these transitions. They're not well. And I call them out in this book, The Happy Inheritor. Yeah. There are a lot of unhappy inheritors, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And the book really tries to, no one has done this. No one has written about this. This is not a book that feels familiar. It tackles a tricky subject in a kind of humorous way.
Yeah.
Not that I'm making light of it, but I'll tell you right now, if you're a family member or you're an employee working for a covert narcissist, you've got some big problems in front of you. And you need to identify these personality types and make better decisions, because it is not going to end well. That narcissist is going to destroy that business. They're going to take it to their grave. And that actually is the plan. Yeah. The plan is no plan.
Right. Yeah. I think that. So think about that. So Dad and I love, I think it was your first book, right? Every Family's Business. And thinking about that forced generational transition. I thought that was it's a simple message, but it's actually just so profound, where, to your point, the person that inherits a business, and I was like, dude, I've never even wanted this. Talk to me about, for maybe folks that are not familiar with, in the back of that book, you have this family business blueprint. It's questions that you and the family members that own the business can ask and answer. Me and Dad actually do it on an annual basis. We do it every December. It's been a great tool ever since you gave Dad your first book. He shared it with me, and we go through those same questions. Can you talk to me about those questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So those are 12 questions that presume that, the answer that is right for that family sits between the space between, parent and rising generation.
Right.
The questions really unlock the answer that's in the room. And the answer that is right for that family is different for your family, different from my family.
Right.
It creates space for unique family solutions to emerge in a lot of cases. In fact, in the majority of cases, that next generation simply does not want to risk their capital to purchase the family business at full market value based on a third-party valuation.
Exactly.
What they're doing is we're waiting for their parent to die.
Right.
That is the only way they've been left to believe that they're going to get control of the family business. Right. Someone needs to die. Now think of the cognitive dissonance that's involved in there. I love my parents. I want them to die. Because I want to run I love them, want them to die.
Exactly.
Love them, want to. I mean, that is an unappealing way to live out your life.
I know,
with that internal conflict. It's tearing families apart from the inside out. So, but all my books are dealing with the transition. Money is in motion, whether it's in the form of a business or a vacation home or cash.
Right.
Money is moving. $3.3 billion a day is inherited.
Wow.
It is such a staggering amount of money. It's hard to actually imagine what that looks like. And it's not going well.
Yeah.
It's not going well.
Right.
The courts are full of families in dispute.
Yeah.
Because there's been no conversation. So the questions are trying to start the family conversation around how is wealth going to transition? When is it going to transition? Who gets what? And making sure mom and dad actually have a will. It's a crazy idea, this idea of a will. Crazy. It's so crazy it may just work one day.
So one of the more shocking statistics, I've talked about this with every guest on our summit edition of the Exit Is Now podcast, but the 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Survey came out at the beginning of the year, and it showed a wildly improved business owner segment, right? Definitely more educated. It was probably the biggest thing. I definitely understand exit strategy. But they're showing they are more ready and they're more prepared for this eventual transition. But if you start to dissect this, and for our audience, if you're looking at this report, look into the wills and trust section. It's still their poorest section.
Yeah.
So when we talk about personal financial readiness, we challenge a little bit is where's the proof, right? So if you're saying, of course, like I feel very ready, well, do you have a documented will or trust? Is it updated and all that? Can you talk to that a little bit? Because that's the second book that you have.
Exactly. Yeah. So no, it continues to be a huge problem. We're talking about business owners who are smarter than the average bear. These are accomplished people who take risk.
Yes.
They invent products and services. They're driven. They're hardworking. They're educated, and they're doing incredibly stupid things.
Exactly.
They make some of the dumbest decisions when it comes to the most important document of their life, which is the transition of their life's work. Who's going to get it? It's going somewhere.
Right.
It's going to the government. It's going to the family, or it's going to go to charity. It's going somewhere.
Yeah.
And they dither. You would not believe the amount of superstition that is alive and well in the business community. There's a lot of business owners. I sign a will, hold a will, bring that will home, keep it in my home. I don't know if you know, but studies show that they'll immediately die.
Yes. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Can you imagine me arguing that if you have a will, you can tag on an extra 10 years, you'll live longer? Both are absurd.
Right.
It has nothing to do with your health. It just means that you're thoughtful. You care about your family. You understand that you're not going to live forever. You're doing the responsible thing. With the creation of wealth comes a responsibility to transition wealth.
Yeah.
And a lot of entrepreneurs who have come from nothing, they're not really tuned into that message.
Exactly.
And that's really what I've been trying to do with my public lectures and my books.
Exactly, right.
Is raise the awareness.
How many speaking engagements?
2,028 countries.
Oh man, that's
it's alarming.
Remember the traveling days? So do you do a lot of virtual stuff now too? You do a little bit of hybrid?
I do. There's still some stuff left over from the pandemic.
Yeah,
but
most of your stuff's gone back to in person.
Oh, it's all back. Yeah.
Yeah. See, so are you traveling as much as you were? Because when I met you, I met you and Dad didn't have his book. So for our audience, a little bit of history, right? You actually coached my dad a bit when he when he wrote his first Walking into Destiny edition.
Yep.
Because we were so impressed with your style of writing and your success. But what always hit Dad, he's like, dude, am I going to have to speak 150 times a year to make this happen like Tom or what? So are you still speaking at that level?
I am.
Yeah. See, that's great. It's crazy good. I think that.
But you got to remember, it's not like when I'm on the road traveling, I'm falling behind on my email or I have consulted.
Because this is what you do.
This is all I do. So I'm not falling behind. Yeah. This is what I do and I love it. In fact, the most work is the travel. The speaking is pure joy. I love it.
I think that would be super fascinating. Like this, I saw you. What I can appreciate about you is that you were active in the community, right? You're out at the socials. I saw you when I was doing a show over here. I saw you walking through the exhibit hall, really interacting. So that has to be really fulfilling. And as a content producer, maybe it gives you some motivation for what's next when you're writing and things of that or speaking.
Oh, I feel sometimes guilty. I'll leave this conference. It was fabulous.
Yeah.
I will have left making all sorts of notes. I learn all the time from my audience.
Absolutely.
I think the best speakers, there's that sense of reciprocity. They're teaching, but they're also learning. They're open to learn. And, no one's got a lock on the truth. There's always a little bit of a piece of the puzzle, particularly when it comes to exit planning.
Absolutely.
There's always a little piece that's missing for most people. It's fun to kind of decode it and kind of try to offer a different perspective. As a thought leader, that's how you do it. You listen.
Totally agree.
You don't speak. The best speakers are really great listeners.
Yeah, really great listeners. Well, Tom, we're going to get on with some more guests and everything. So I really appreciate you spending some extra time with us, going in the exhibit hall, shaking hands with our SEPAs, coming on my show again. And maybe we'll see you for a 4th, 5th, 6th time as we continue to grow the Exit Planning Summit.
I tell you right now, it's my favorite conference.
I love that, Tom.
I love working with you guys.
I love that.
You're the best.
Well, thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. Guys, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast, hanging out with Skylar. I've been trying to get you to do a power session, I think, for like 2 or 3 years now. And we finally got you on stage.
Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. You're very
awesome,
welcome. Man. Unbelievable. I think you always have a unique message that's really inspiring, particularly in the advisory community. Can you talk about what your power session was all about?
Yeah, essentially the whole idea was just trying to help educate people in that it's not about just taking from people. It's also about giving back. And I found that most of the business that I've been able to attract has been because of me giving away.
Yeah.
And I think like the Aloha spirit, and the reason why I created the brand and the firm was because I wanted that to be kind of like a center point of our messaging.
Yeah.
Because it's not all about money. It is about sharing and being a part of something that's bigger than you. So that was really the
that's I think your entire vibe. We're also in the little green room before, and all of our power session speakers were talking about how I don't think I've ever seen you not in like a Hawaiian shirt. Like this guy just lives. It is a part of who he is. It's just it's your brand.
Yeah.
But so kind of talk to me about how that brand plays into your professional advisory firm, right? I think it's, again, just a unique thing that typically advisors show up looking like me, and you look like you, and it's kind of inspiring.
Yeah, thanks. So my dad's been an advisor since the early 80s.
Yeah.
So I always grew up with going downstairs and having the CNBC on with the ticker tapes all across the TV. He had an office. He was very corporate, just came from that world of the 80s financial advisor. And when I came back from Hawaii, it was something where I remember this is a funny story. I remember I showed up to my dad's house or to his office, and I had sandals on with board shorts and a shirt. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I'm here to work, bro." He goes, "No, you're not. Turn around and get out of here." And I was like, "All right, well, that's not going to work for me. So I got to figure out how to be professional, but also kind of maintain my vibe."
Your vibe, yeah.
And what I realized is I didn't want to be the typical the typical firm that the financial industry kind of imagines. I wanted to be the furthest thing away from what Wall Street represented. Right. And to me, that was spiritually and physically. I was in Hawaii. That was the Aloha spirit. So I've always thought about it in that way. And it was always a dream of mine ever since I started in this business that I wanted to do something that kind of had a different take on the financial advisory business and services. And so for me, I've always tried to put that as like a centerpiece to what we're doing.
Yeah. So I've been asking all of our guests kind of throughout the summit, because I would say kind of the theme this year is debuting this 2023 National State of Owner Readiness Survey. So we're seeing right over the 10 years that business owners are more educated than ever before, more ready, more prepared. Do you feel that in the actual boots on the ground and working with business owners, that they are in fact more educated and moving along in the right direction?
I think some are trying to get more educated.
Yeah.
Especially in California, because in California our regulation is pretty tight.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of companies that are leaving or just altogether folding. So I think they're trying to figure out which direction to go in next. The cool thing again about being a part of EPI and being a part of our chapters is we get to actually discuss and talk about this stuff with other people in the community. Yeah. So San Diego being a good chapter, as good of a chapter as it is, that's kind of the thing that I'm hearing too from down there. There are some people that are getting more interested in understanding how to do the exit, or just transition to their family. But yeah, I think for the moment, most of what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is most business owners are trying to become more educated.
So talk to me about the chapter as well. So that whole Southern California market for us is probably some of the best chapters. We announced on Sunday, I guess it was, in our annual President Circle meeting, the top 5 performing chapters, and 3 of them I think were Southern California based. But your power session too, you talked about like finding your tribe, if you will. Is that an example of that for you? That San Diego, the collaboration and the commonality that you guys all have?
Totally. I would say that the San Diego chapter in particular just has that type of person who, I mean, we all share a lot of the same licenses. You know, like I have friends who have the same Series 7 and 66 or insurance license or whatever, and we can do everything the same. Yeah. But I've understood, and what I've realized is when I can focus on my thing and then I can pass off opportunities to other people, then we're all collaborating together in a way that makes a lot of sense, and everyone's kind of winning. And so that tribe mentality is because of EPI and those chapters.
Yeah, absolutely. Very community centric. You kind of see it here.
Totally.
Do you remember your first conference?
Well, I don't remember. Well, I think last year was the first time that I actually came to one of the conferences.
First time was just last year. So you never got to see it small.
No,
we saw it kind of.
It's kind of
like
scaled,
this. It's kind of scaled.
Yeah.
I was talking to a gentleman yesterday at the social who his first conference was 2014. So there's probably like 100 people there, and he hasn't been back for like 10 years. And he kind of walked in here and he's like, "What in the hell is going on?" It's such an evolution, right, of the exit planning community. So the other thing inside of that state of owner readiness survey, and probably what I'm most interested in, is really what's to come. I think I said this on the main stage that it's one of the reasons that in part of the Excellence in Exit Planning Awards, we formed a circle of excellence, this Exit Planning Hall of Fame, to recognize those that have really been doing it for many, many years and inspiring the next evolution of exit planning. I think last year with the debut of Dad's second edition of Walking to Destiny, and now the launch of the National State of Owner Readiness Survey, now I'm looking out 5 to 10 years. So where do you think the business owner landscape is going? Do you think, again, it's just going to continue to build and build and build? And what's your thoughts about the future?
That's a really good question. I would say that I think like our generation, the millennial generation, is getting pretty excited about doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think at least 10 or 15 of my really close friends have their own companies.
Yeah.
One of them is actually going through an exit right now.
Oh,
He's 35 years old. It's super successful. It's like ridiculous.
Wow.
But I would say, from a generational perspective, the millennials, I think, are going to be starting new businesses and companies. And who knows, how that's going to look and what type of industries they're going to focus on. I think from the baby boomer generation, I think you're right in that we as exit planners and as professionals who are trying to help them through this process, there is going to be a lot of questions and how we're going to do this, and $14 trillion of opportunity in that space, because it's just I don't know. I would say that the baby boomer generation is gonna need a lot of help. I think the millennial generation, I think they're going to be more educated on how this process works.
Naturally, right? They have more access to information than ever before, like all of us. Like we're listening to podcasts, reading books, listening to audiobooks, attending conferences. I'd like to think that the next 5 to 10 years, with more ready and more educated owners, they're actually more motivated to run their business with the end in mind and go exit strategy as business strategy. There's really nothing different, right?
Yep.
So in closing of our segment here, what's your advice to all the new SEPAs coming through? Because now, you're gonna be a celebrity for like the next year in the exit planning community because of your power session. So what's the keys to success as a SEPA?
Thanks. Hardly a celebrity. I would say that, like I said before, in my power session, just find your favorite people in your community and focus on one thing that you really enjoy doing. And pass off the stuff that you can do, but it's not going to actually serve you or the client well. Because at the end of the day, everybody can do, again, we all have the same license. We can all do the same thing. But if you focus on one thing, the client's experience is going to be so much better. And they're going to be better serviced by having somebody who focuses on one slice of their particular avenue in their life.
Cool.
So I would say just collaborating with other people, even though you can do it, just understanding, just give it up, and it will come back around.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I think I made you late for a flight.
No,
but nonetheless,
no.
I really appreciate the power session and all the work that you're doing here in the EPI community. Stick with us, guys, and we'll be right back. Hey everybody, welcome to the Exit Is Now podcast with me, your host, Scott Snider. A couple of unique additions to the Exit Is Now podcast. We're broadcasting here live from the Exit Planning Summit. So a record-breaking event here in Marco Island, Florida. 800 attendees, 43 partners, 25 sessions, 4 main stages, a golf outing and workshops. I have the pleasure, though, to be sitting here today with one of our own from Team EPI, Scott Lang. Many of you might know Scott as he's certainly one of our top, if not the top performing business development manager that we have. Many people that are new to the exit planning community likely had talked to Scott on their way in. But one of the reasons Scott and his wife Mindy is here as well at the Exit Planning Summit with us today because Scott won Employee of the Year at EPI. So we wanted to put together a series of awards that our employees could take part in. One of them being Employee of the Year, another one being Rookie of the Year. We have a lot of new faces at EPI year over year. And so we have a Rookie of the Year award among some other sales awards and core value awards. But one of the benefits, if you will, of winning that Employee of the Year award is to come hang out at the Exit Planning Summit. So, Scott, welcome to the show, and thanks for coming out to Marco. And thanks for being kind to me on the golf course. So Scott's like a scratch golfer, let's say. I think he probably shot like a 75 yesterday. He bared with me as I think I lost like 2 cases of balls. But nonetheless, it was a good event. So I want to talk to you about culture at EPI. I was just actually down in the Summit 50 lunch with my dad, a VIP experience that we have here at EPI, talking about the importance of social capital and culture. So you've been here how long at EPI?
Yeah, just a few weeks ago. It was 5 years.
5 years ago, and I think time flies, man. So talk to me about your experience at EPI and kind of the impacts on our culture, meaning that you saw us then through COVID as well. So you came in in what, 2019, I guess that is?
2019.
Yeah, 2019.
Yeah.
So the business has changed quite a bit. Kind of talk to that experience.
Yeah, I mean, the business has changed quite a bit. EPI has changed quite a bit. I think we as a team have been through a lot, right?
Yeah.
And, sitting here today and seeing 800 people come through this conference is pretty wild. It's
pretty wild,
This beautiful resort that we're at. And, EPI is unique. I think our culture is probably one of a kind. And, it's probably hard to duplicate, but I think that the processes can be duplicated. That the people make the business. And, we're surrounded by people that really focus on self, right? Like they're not selfish, but everybody that we work with has a certain amount of pride, right?
Yeah.
And I think we all hold each other accountable, and we also have some pretty close friendships at EPI too, which is unique.
It's like a family.
It is like a family. I saw your mom this morning and she gave me a hug.
Yeah, right.
So, it's pretty unique, and I think the core of us that have been here and welcoming these new folks that just showed up, 4 or 5 people just got here from back in Cleveland, and it's a pretty fun experience. Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit. So I had the privilege as well to hang out with you at the EOS conference. So what we did this year in terms of our professional development is we took Team EPI, and basically if you were there for a year or more, we basically cut you into 3 different groups, and each group gets to attend a conference this year. So you were actually a part of the EOS group. Talk to me about professional development, purposeful growth, and some of the stuff. Because I'd like to think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd like to think that that's also a unique thing. I think we spend a lot of time and money on helping our people grow. And so talk to me about what you think about that.
Yeah, no, it's super unique. People that work here should be really grateful for that. Because I think, not a lot of owners are going to invest their own money just to develop really young folks. I'm the oldest guy here. I'm 45. And we got an office full of young people. And that doesn't mean they're not talented, right? But they just haven't been exposed to a lot of the stuff that we have.
A lot of people started their career at EPI.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of folks in their 20s. Which is exciting, right? Like that it helps us kind of grow, and we embrace, I think, new ideas, and a lot of that comes from professional development. I mean, you and your dad putting the investment in us, and ultimately in EPI it's paying dividends right now. I think.
So when you talk about being more veteran, just a question that popped for me was, do you find yourself mentoring a lot as well? Because I'm close. Me and you are like the 2 old guys of the group, but I've always, for lack of better words, really, Scott, I've always kind of looked up to you as well as a mentor for me. And so, do you find, and you were here when there was 10 people, and now there's 35 people.
I think I was employee number 8. Maybe?
Number 8,
something like that,
so you've seen rapid growth in your 5 years. So as a more veteran guy, both in terms of experience in the market and kind of a more veteran guy at EPI. Do you find a lot of our younger employees, does that give any sense of burden for you? Or
no,
what does that feel like?
It keeps us young, right? I mean, the sales team has gone from Jesse and I to 6 deep now. We're hiring another SDR. And everybody on our team is really aggressive and really competitive. And we seem to hire healthy people too, right? So it kind of breeds through us, which pushes me. I come into work and I got Big Joe and Sean,
you got people
and Ron,
that work out like crazy.
And even Colin. I mean, it's just a healthy environment.
It is, That is interesting to say. It kind of keeps you young and fresh.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of keeps you on your toes too, because these young folks that are on your team are always looking to beat the big guy out, right?
Yeah.
So I would assume it does keep you kind of fresh thoughts, fresh ideas.
It is a lot of energy.
A lot of energy.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how the process has changed in selling SEPA. So, you were there in 2019 selling certified exit planning advisors into in-person programming only. Bigger price tag, more of a burden. I was just talking to our chapter president in Philadelphia, Matt, and he was talking to me, are we going to bring back an in-person program? And I said, I don't know yet. I don't know if the appetite's there because the price tag is now about half. And then you don't have all the stuff that comes after that, all the travel and expenses that come after it. But has your conversation changed? Also, I think as the designation has matured, has that changed as well?
Yes and no. I think it depends on who you're talking to, right? I mean, I think we've become a company and a designation that people are just coming to get, and there's not much of a conversation being had, right? People know who we are. The brand is kind of speaking for itself. So the conversations has changed. I mean, we've made the program pretty flexible. You can dive in pretty deep with us, after the fact. But getting the designation is a fairly quick process.
That's true.
So like generally speaking, I think it's become a little bit more transactional. And a lot of the consulting and helping of the advisors happens on the account management side once they come through the program. So. I think that's going to continue too. Like I don't see the growth of this.
I don't think it's slowing down
anytime soon.
They were talking about that at our chapter president circle meeting too. That it hasn't really slowed. Right? Is that they're asking me to support Jenna, right? Our community coordinator here at EPI, as our chapters grow, both individually, right? More attendance and more awareness, and then as we expand our chapter network as well. I mean, I don't think it's slowing down at all.
It's not slowing down. I think we're going to see growth from some other advisor types. We've seen kind of an explosion within the financial services, the wealth managers, the financial advisors, but more folks are coming,
So last question that I have for you, and I'm going to put you on the spot. If you know my show well, we don't rehearse anything, so Scott, I'm just pinging with questions that I find interesting. But again, more as a veteran guy and somebody that just won Employee of the Year, for everybody listening to the show that is in a rapidly growing business, or maybe even some of our own people, what's some words of wisdom? How did you get to be where you're at?
Our team, we lean on each other pretty heavily.
So open to collaboration and teamwork.
We got to lean on folks. We set some pretty lofty goals, and we don't reach them by ourselves. So you got to hire the right people, and you got to lean on them. And we've been blessed. I mean, we've had a little bit of turnover, but not much. EPI has done well as far as holding this team together, and I think that's where our success comes from.
That's fair. Well, we're going to take a quick break, get on some more guests here at the Exit Planning Summit. Scott, appreciate you spending a few minutes with me. I'll let you and Mindy get back to the beach. All right, we'll talk again.